All right. Hey, everybody. Kathleen Jasper here, and I'm so excited to be with you today for the Praxis 5001 webinar. We are doing a free elementary education webinar today, and I'm just checking on all my socials to make sure that I am live everywhere, and it looks like I am. Let me just check. Come on into the webinar room. And I'm live. Good. Come on into the webinar room. You can chat with me in the chat. Let me know that you can hear me and see me okay. According to my stuff, my mic is on, my camera is on. Everyone can hear and see me, but just let me know in the chat that you are here. If you're watching me live on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you get your social media, you can join the webinar through the link in the description. So just click the link in the description and it'll take you to grab the resources for the webinar. With this free webinar comes a study guide, a mini study guide, and some more information. And after the study guide or after the webinar is over, we will send you an email with all of the information I talk about today. So don't worry about taking notes and trying to record everything I say. You're going to get an email with everything that I say today and talk about. So if you've joined the webinar through the actual webinar link and you're talking with me right now, I can see Amy and Charles and Meredith and Jasmine and Elena and Mike and Tamara and a bunch of other people here. So glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining. You're actually going to get an email after this is over. If you're joining on social, that's fine too. You can stay there, or you can come into the webinar by clicking the link and just filling out the form. You can also do that later. Now, this did come with a free study guide for the Praxis 5001. That's elementary education. And it doesn't matter if you couldn't download that right now. I'm going to project everything I talk about today on the screen. So don't worry about trying to print that out and have it in front of you. I've got everything on the screen. You're going to get the replay link when this is over, so you can watch it when we're done at your convenience, and you're going to get everything. So just pay attention today. I'm going to be like the teacher in the front of the class. Don't worry about writing everything down. Just pay attention to the presentation and you'll be fine. So good morning, everybody. So happy you are here. It is Saturday, March 16th, 10 a.m. 10:01, and we are doing the Praxis Elementary Education Multiple Subjects 5001 webinar. Now, this webinar will help you obviously with the 5001. It will help you with the 5901 also, which is another elementary education test. It'll help you with the 7811. I mean, they're all kind of the same. It'll help you pretty much with any elementary education test you are taking for your certification. They all cover kind of the same things. Let me just fix my phone so my thing doesn't go off. And they all, cover ELA and reading, mathematics, social studies, and science. Some cover more things, but for the most part, all of them cover these same things. So just pay attention today. You got a free study guide with signing up for this particular webinar. We are going to be working from my brand new second edition 5001 book. You can see this is a 500 plus page book. This has evolved over the years into a bigger book. We love this. This is our number one program, obviously, because there are so many elementary education teachers in the country. So a lot of people have to take this test. So this is our number one, and I know a lot about this test. I've studied it for a long time, and I'm going to give you lots of tips for this particular exam. I see a couple people in here about the 5017. Yes, this will help you for the 5017. Somebody's asking me about the 5025. That's the early childhood. A lot of this will go over to the early childhood, but we have early childhood webinars as well. I'm doing another one of those. I can't remember the date. You have to check on my webinars page. I'll show you where to get that. But we're doing a 5025 as well. So we cover everything, but today is 5001, elementary education. All right. And I have a colleague in the chat. Her name is Yana Bossy, and she just gave the link to see where we have all the webinars. And you can click that. She's going to help you while I'm doing my presentation, because I can't present and answer questions at the same time. So she is in there. All right, Melissa's taking the 5004 at 11:20. Okay, so we got to get moving, Melissa, so we can get you through that. So we are working from this big book. I have done a study guide from this, a little mini study guide. You can use our free resources. You can also use our paid resources. Let me show you where to get a few extra resources before we get started, okay? So let me just share my screen here. So some of you already have the book, which is great, but we're at kathleenjasper.com. Let me just go ahead and stop the bookmarks tab. There we go. So we are on my website here, if you go under our programs and click 5001, it'll take you to this page here where it has everything. It has the books, the online courses, everything you could possibly need. Now, if you do want the study guide, which is the best, it's the best one. Everybody wants the study guide. You just click that link. It'll take you to the study guide. But if you want a physical version, and this is a huge book, so don't buy the digital and print it out. This will totally kill your printer. Just click this button on Amazon here, and it'll take you over to our Amazon pages here, and you'll be able to see that. Now we have this new edition, and we have the first edition. This one has over 900 5-star reviews. So we have both of those here, and we have the latest edition here. So you can do that by going to our website. You just click this Amazon button, it'll take you there. Now, if you only need one area, just buy one. You don't need to buy the whole book, but if you need 2 or more, I recommend getting the full book because it's less expensive that way. Now, one more thing that we have are the online courses. So if you click Praxis 5001, you can see that we have the online courses here. You can buy them by a single subject area or by the whole thing. And our online courses are very comprehensive, tons of video. It comes with the study guide. It's complete prep for this particular course, okay? So now that we've gotten through that, we can talk more about this free webinar, but I want to make sure you guys know where you can get our paid resources as well. The free stuff works. A lot of people just use our free stuff. We have a comprehensive YouTube channel with all kinds of free videos. We have this webinar I'm going to go through with you. Some of you will just pass with that. Other people need more support. We have a study guide. We have online courses and all of that. If you've attended this webinar right now and you are in the chat, you are going to get a 20% off coupon for the resources. So check your email, and I believe Yana will put it in the chat as well for those of you. And if you're watching on social, just sign up using the link in the description and you'll get that coupon. It'll come in an email, so you'll be fine there. Okay. So let's see here. So we've got Taking Elementary Education 5001, April 10th in Boise, Idaho. All right, Meredith. Well, this is going to help you. Meg is retaking the 5008. This is similar. The math and the science for the 5008 is similar to the 5001, but I also have 5008 resources. So definitely if you're taking the 5006, 007, or 008, you can find those on my website as well. Okay. All right. So let's get started. And the book, everybody's asking, does the book cover 02, 03, 04, and 05? Yes. This covers all the subtests. So 5001 is the name of the whole test. That's the entire test. The ELA is 5002. That's this tab here. The math is 5003. That's this tab here. The social studies is 5004. That's this tab here. And the science is 5005. That's this tab here. So yes, we cover all 4 subtests, and you can buy it individually, because if you pass, let's say you pass the 5002, the 003, and the 004, and you miss the science, you only have to take the science. It's broken up into subtests. So like Brandy here saying, I have one subtest left to pass the 5003. A lot of people need help with the 5003 because this is elementary education math, but it's super hard. It's not easy. So a lot of people don't feel bad about that, but you passed all the other ones. So that's great. So if she wanted to just get the 5003, she can on our website. So that'll help. All right. Tiffany needs to pass the 5002. That's a tough. Typically, the ELA and the math are the hardest ones because the English language arts and reading portion, the 5002, has a lot of teaching scenarios. And if you're new to teaching, these ones are hard. We're going to go over a bunch of them today. All right. And the 5003, the math, is also difficult because the math, even though it's elementary math, it's hard. They have slope intercept on there. They have really hard algebra problems. They even have the coordinate plane, X, Y. It's hard. So, it's okay. A lot of people have to take this test more than once. Don't get down on yourself. You're in the right place. We're going to talk more about it today. All right. So what I'm going to do is hop in between my presentation and the free study guide just to show you a few things. I have put some of the questions from the free study guide into my presentation. I don't have time to do all of them, but there are detailed answer explanations in the free study guide. I always recommend when you get our study guides and when you are looking over our materials that you always read the answer explanations. I have very detailed answer explanations in the book, and it's important that you read those because it's almost like another chapter. It tells you even more information than was just in the question. So definitely read those. Now, let me show you today let me go here. The stuff you're getting with the webinar today. You got this free study guide. Oh, let me go up here. Sorry. Oh, I don't want to make you dizzy. Let me just use the tab here. Okay, so this is the 5001 free study guide that you got with this particular webinar. You can see this is just the free version. There's a breakdown of this and then some information, especially for the ELA. There's a lot of good stuff here. And then questions, and then very detailed answer explanations, and then questions, and then detailed answer explanations. So make sure you read through those detailed answer explanations. Now, this is a shorter version, like I said, of the paid book, which is this. The paid book is very comprehensive. You can see that. I mean, just for the reading and language arts, there's 147 pages just for that. And then for the mathematics, there's like another 137 pages or something. Social studies, same thing. And you can see that after each content category, there are practice questions. So not only do we have the practice tests, full practice tests, you can see here for the social studies, test 1, test 2. But after each section, like this is United States history, government, and citizenship. After each section, and let me just scroll here. Sorry, making you dizzy. This is actually one of the biggest sections. Okay, let's see. There are 10 questions. There we go. 10 questions just for that. So you can see what questions would be like for that particular section, because each of these are broken up into sections, and you're going to learn more about that today. I'm going to show you that, okay? But today we're going to be working from this free study guide here. Definitely check that out and make sure to read the answer explanations, okay? So let's go to my presentation and we'll get started here. So we are doing the Praxis Elementary Education 5001. That's what we're focusing on today. I know a lot of people need lots of different tests. This webinar is for the 5001. If you have questions on other tests, we're happy to help you. Just email us at info@kathleenjasper.com and we will help you with whatever you need and we'll point you in the right direction, okay? So we are focusing on the 5001 today. All right, so when we talk about the 5001, there are actually 4 subtests. So the whole test is called the 5001. And this can be very confusing to people because, it's like all these numbers, 5001, 02, 03, 08, 5354, they all have these different numbers. The 5001 is the whole entire test. But it's broken up into these 3 or 4 subtests. The 02 is reading and language arts. The 03 is math. The 5004 is social studies. And the 5005 is science. All right. Now you can see here, the biggest part of the full test is both the 5002 reading and language arts and the math. Well, why is that? Well, the reading and language arts is the biggest by far with 90 questions and at 80 minutes of the entire test. Because as an elementary education teacher, you are a reading teacher first and foremost. You can't teach social studies, you can't teach science, you can't teach anything without those reading foundations. And arguably, you can't even teach math either because there are a lot of word problems in math. Now, a lot of math teachers would disagree with me. They would say, and I know this because I was an assistant principal and I worked with lots of math teachers, math is math, reading is reading. And you are correct. However, having the foundations of both math and reading is very important when we're teaching social studies and science. There's a lot of reading in both social studies and science. There's math and science. All of these subjects are interdisciplinary. They kind of intermingle, especially in the elementary grades. So we want to make sure we have teachers who are very well trained in these areas. The thing about the reading and language arts subtest is that it's got a lot of teaching scenarios. And remember, I always talk about working backward on those particular questions. I have a lot of videos on test strategy, and we're going to hook that up in the email we send out to you guys today for the for this particular webinar. And I will send you to that test strategy playlist. And that's going to show you how to work backward, how to find keywords, especially for the reading and language arts. This one's a really good one to use those strategies. And I'm going to show them in context in just a minute. And then the math as well, very difficult. People are like, oh, it's elementary math. How hard can it be? Very hard, actually. I would challenge anybody who thinks that this is an easy exam to take it. And I will tell you that there's only a 50% pass rate on many Praxis exams. So those who are saying, oh, it can't be that hard. Okay, well then you take it after not seeing math for 20 years or something like that, because I know a lot of you are career changers. You haven't seen some of this math in a long time, but it is part of the elementary education curriculum, so we need to be proficient in that area. The social studies and science for this particular exam, there are not really any scenario questions about teaching social studies and science. It's more about just those particular content areas. So it's a lot of memorization. Now, here's the thing. People will say, well, I took the social studies exam and, not very many of the questions in the study guide were on the exam. Well, first of all, social studies covers a very wide range of questions. And I have no idea what test you're going to get. I don't know what questions you're going to get. I do my best to structure the study guide so they have the same test question structure, same rigor. But I mean, if you just look at U.S. history, there are a million things they could ask you about U.S. history. That's why it's really important to read the information to understand, like life science. There's a million different questions that could be asked for life science, from cells all the way to ecosystems, animals, respiratory system, circulatory system. I mean, the mitochondria. I mean, there's so many things that could be asked. That's why it's so important that you read the actual study guide and don't just look for practice tests and test questions. It's important to understand what we're talking about here, because you're going to be asked these questions in a variety of ways. And I have no idea what test you're going to get. And I shouldn't know. It's a state standardized assessment. Nobody knows what questions you're going to get. So trying to memorize your study guide test questions is an exercise in futility. I would recommend actually learning the information so you are ready to go on test day. And you can see these are slightly smaller tested areas than the math and the ELA. All right. And you have about 65 and 55 minutes for each of those, all right? So let's go ahead and start with 5002. This is the English language arts section. Some people would say this is the hardest section, depends. I think the 5002 and the 5003 are the hardest, in my own opinion. But of course, everybody's different. So for the 5002, there are actually two main content categories. So here's how we look at it. These here, the 5002, the 5003, 5004, and 5005 are referred to as subtests. There's a reading and language arts subtest, a math subtest, a social studies subtest, and a science subtest. The whole test is the 5001. These are subtests. Now, within the subtests, so the 5002 is a subtest, there are content categories inside the subtest. So for the 5002, reading and language arts, there is a reading section. I'm going to tell you, and there's even subtopics in that. And there's a writing, speaking, and listening section. And you can see the reading section is 38 and the writing, speaking, and listening is 42. They're pretty much evenly split. But you can see here, reading is just one content category, one subject. Writing, speaking, and listening is 3. So arguably, there's more reading questions than anything else, because 38 comes straight from reading. 42 is split among 3 different things here. Just getting a little technical there. But for the most part, for the 5002, you are going to want to really be schooled in the foundational skills of reading. Now, I'm going to go through a lot of them here today. In the 5002 online course, I go into them very intensely. And also I have a reading playlist on my YouTube channel that goes over this as well. And again, we'll link that up in the email that I'm going to send out with you today once you finish the webinar. So these are the things you really need to know in order to do well on the 5002. Because as a elementary education teacher, you have to understand, well, what's the difference between phonological and phonemic awareness? What's the difference between those and phonics and fluency and comprehension and metacognition? You will get questions on these particular topics, all right? So let's break them down really quickly. Of course, I have more information in a more in-depth courses and things like that, but let's give them a quick rundown here. All right, so phonological and phonemic awareness, I want you to remember, are sounds only. Okay? Phonological and phonemic awareness, I know they kind of run together and they sound a little bit like phonics, but these two here are sounds only. We are working on our listening and speaking skills. You do not have to see the word in order to have phonological and phonemic awareness. So for example, let me see, what's my next slide here? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Phonological awareness is breaking words up by large chunks of sounds in the words. And phonemic awareness is small chunks. So let me do large, small. All right. So let me give you an example of phonological awareness. I might have you break up the word by syllables. For example, something like rabbit. All right, rabbit. That's two sounds, rabbit, right? I might have you break it up by onset and rhyme. The onset is the beginning consonant or consonant cluster, and the rhyme is the ending vowel and consonants. So if I said to my class, break up the word track by onset and rhyme, they would say ter-ack. Ter is the onset, rhyme, and it's spelled R-I-M-E, is the ack is the rhyme. So those are bigger chunks of words, right? Syllables, onset, and rhyme. We might do compound words. They're large. That's phonological awareness. And again, I don't have to see the word. I wrote the word here for you guys because I'm trying to show you what an onset and a rhyme is. But you don't have to do that with phonological awareness. It's just listening. You just say to the kids, all right, how about the word stop? Break it up by onset. And the kids would go st. And I would say, okay, what's the rhyme? And they'd go up. They would know that because these are exercises we do. We teach this explicitly, systematically, and recursively. So kids know how to do this. This is like all in the elementary grades, okay? Now, phonemic awareness is a little more nuanced, a little more complex. These are the small pieces of the word. And this is the individual sounds in the word. So if I was going to break up the word track by phonemic awareness, I would do it like this. T, k, or the K sound. Notice that that's four sounds. T, k. Much different than ter-ack, right? So it's all about the sounds in words. We are teaching students this. These are foundational skills. They have to have phonological and phonemic awareness before they can get into phonics. Phonics, you have to see the word. Phonics is when I look at a C and I determine whether it makes a k sound or a s sound based on what it's followed by. If it's like this, I know that C makes a k sound because it's followed by an A. But if it's followed by a Y, I know it makes a S sound, as in cycle. Now, how do I know that? Well, we teach students phonics rules. And one of the rules, and there are many in phonics, is that when a C is followed by an A, O, or U, it makes a K sound. When it's followed by an E, I, or Y, it makes a S sound. When a P and an H are together, they make a F sound. How do I know that? Well, because I taught the students phonics. Now, before I can have phonics, I have to have phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. Then I move into phonics, actually looking at the word. Notice there's a system. This is all systematic, explicit. We teach these skills in isolation, and we also build on them in a systematic manner. All right, so the words, quick tip here, explicit, systematic, and recursive are good words on this exam. If you see them in an answer choice, it's probably the right answer. Well, explicit, we know. We teach explicitly each individual thing. We model, we go over it, we beat a dead horse explicitly. Systematic is we go by step. First, we do phonological awareness, then we do phonemic awareness, then we do phonics, then we do fluency. We have a step-by-step process. Recursive is when I go back and I say, all right, guys, we need to review our phonemic and phonological awareness so we can get better at this more complex phonics skill. It's when we go back to go forward, basically. That's recursive. So explicit, systematic, and recursive are all good words. Next step is fluency. That's when students move from just decoding words in phonics to actually reading strings of words, sentences, paragraphs, right? And we need students to increase their fluency because without it, they can't have comprehension. And fluency is the bedrock of comprehension because of a little bit of this, metacognition. I'll talk about that in a second. And also their cognitive endurance. When students have fluency, they're moving through the text at a good pace, they're automatic, they're reading things accurately, and that frees up cognitive demand, cognitive energy that they can then use on comprehension. If you're watching a kid sound out every single word of a passage, you know that is exhausting. And they're not comprehending it. They're like decoding. They're using phonics and not fluency. So we move from phonics to fluency, fluency to comprehension, and then metacognition goes with comprehension because metacognition is thinking about thinking. That is when we model our process as teachers on how to figure out words, how to understand words, predicting, going, I wonder what's going to happen next. Oh, I know how to sound out this word. Let me use the words around it. That process of trying to figure things out, we model that for students. That teaches them metacognition, thinking about their thinking. How do I use my brain to figure this thing out? All right. And that's really important. All right. So let's have a look at what a question might look like. This is number 3 from page 8 of the free study guide. Of course, I'm always going to work backwards here. And I can see I have skills here. Can't do much about that. But here's a quick tip. Decoding and phonics are the same thing. And if it's asking for just one right answer, you can't have 2 of the same thing in the answer choices, right? If there's only one correct answer, 2 of the same thing is incorrect. So just thinking like a test maker, and I always say that, think like a test maker, not a test taker, want to cross off B and C, all right? Because they're the same thing. Now, phonemic awareness is sounds only, and structural analysis is sort of a phonics skill. I'll leave it because it's not explicitly phonics, but phonemic awareness is standing out here. Let's have a look at the bullets, continuing to work backwards. Remember, always work backwards. Teach students to break down words by individual sounds. Teach students to focus on sounds. Sounds, sounds. What did I say before? Phonemic awareness and phonological awareness are all about the sounds in words. Decoding and phonics are letter, sound, correspondence. You have to see the letter to understand the sound, like in cycle, right? I have to see the C and then the Y to know it makes a sound in the beginning. But with phonemic awareness, I don't do that. I'm just paying attention to sounds. Looks like A is my correct answer. Let's have a look at the question. Based on the following instructional practices, what type of lesson is the teacher working on? Okay, just fluff there. Really, the important part are these bullets here. And I know it sounds only. Structural analysis is breaking up words by prefixes, suffixes, roots, also compound words. Structural analysis goes with morphology, and morphology is phonics. So really, B, C, and D are all the same kind of skills. So we could cross those off because we're only being asked for one correct answer, and A is the one that stands out. That's just a way to think like a test maker. I study tests, you guys, and I see patterns, and it's important that you think like a test maker, not a test taker. I say that all the time. It's going to help you because you're not going to know the answers to all these questions. You're just not. But these kinds of ways in working through them will help you be more strategic. All right, so then we get into reading of literature and informational text. This is also called a balanced literacy program where we use literature and informational text. So stories and like newspaper articles. Very important that we're using both. And you can see I have that. Informational versus literary text. We're going to focus on text structure. Is it cause and effect? Is it chronological? Is it argumentative? Is it expository? Is it a narrative? And then, of course, text features, the index, the headings, the graphs, and teaching this to students at a very young age as well. When they hold a storybook, they know the front cover, they know the table of contents, they know the page numbers. Just teaching them how to use the book is very important, especially in the early grades. Then as we get up into more comprehension and critical thinking, we're comparing multiple texts, another good word. We want students to look at one piece and look at another piece and be able to make connections. This is also a really good word, text to self. We want students to be able to see themselves in text and say, hey, how do I relate to this character? How do I understand this character? What do I know about this in my own life? Very important, text to self. And then, of course, evidence-based discussion is a big part of the Common Core standards in English language arts. And it's all about requiring students to use evidence from the text to support their claims. So, for example, if a student says, this person did this and that was blah, 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 and they say something, and you're like, oh, that's a really good observation. Where in the text did you get that information? Or what in the text led you to that belief? Can you show me a page number? Can you put your finger on it? That's the beginning stages of teaching students how to cite text. Because starting at about 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, all the way up through college and career, they're going to have to cite that information properly using, the author, the date, depending if they're using APA or MLA. And then these skills that we're teaching them early on, where did you get that information? Where did the author say that? What page number was it on? Is the start of that kind of skill, which is really, really important, okay? You can have an opinion, but we need to know where in the text does that support your opinion. All right, so let's have a look at what that might look like on the exam, okay? And we're here again. This is what I call a scenario question, where we have a scenario here and all the answer choices are scenarios. And a lot of times students will say, well, all the answer choices looked good. They'll email us and say, hey, I think every answer could be the right answer. And this has to do with a couple of things. Number one, you're brand new to teaching, so you don't know some of these smaller nuances that you need to be on the lookout for. And number two, you're not paying attention to the good words and bad words in the answer choices. So this one's a good one to do that with. So I'm going to start with the answer choices first. Allow students to partner up and read the text with a buddy. Okay. Now, if I'm a new teacher, partnering up and reading with a buddy sounds good. And I might say, well, that sounds pretty good. It's cooperative learning. I'm going to leave it. Okay. It's okay. It's not great. It doesn't say what they're going to do. It doesn't say how it's going to be structured. Cooperative learning is very good, but this has like no structure to it. What are they going to do? Partnering up. What does that do? So I don't hate it, but I don't love it. B, reward the students with extra time in the computer lab for finishing the reading. Now, if you're a new teacher, you might say, well, yeah, of course, rewards are good. It works with my students. And they do work with your students. I used rewards all the time with my students. But in life and on this exam, rewards wear off after a while. I would stay away from extrinsic rewards in the answer choices, because typically those are not the way we want students to be motivated. We want students to be motivated intrinsically. All right. C, require, already a bad word because it sounds punitive. The students to finish reading for homework. Homework is a bad word on this test. Do we use homework? Yes, of course we use homework. But on this test, homework is usually attached to students who are struggling and not the best practice for those students, okay? Homework is not bad. I'm not saying homework is bad. I'm saying homework is a bad answer on this exam, okay? D, allow the students to self-select books, like it, those are good words, from a standards-aligned group of informational texts. Notice how many good words are there. Self-select books. Self-selecting books helps with this text to self. Allow students to pick what they want to read. We want them to like to read. So self-selecting books is good. Standards aligned. Anytime you see standards alignment, academic standards, anything about standards in an answer choice, slow down. It's probably the right answer. And then we're talking about informational text here. D's got all the good words. Let's read the question. A teacher notices a few students are not motivated to read the current selection of a piece of informational text. What can the teacher do to motivate students? Now, if I'm a new teacher, rewarding them with extra time sounds good, right? Yeah, give them extra time, give them a lollipop, give them a homework pass or something like that. But in terms of best practices, allowing students to pick what they want to read is an intrinsic motivator. Notice D is intrinsic and B is extrinsic, all right? Partnering up is okay, but that's not necessarily going to motivate them to read informational text. It might momentarily, but D's got all the good words in it. All right, let's have a look at writing, speaking, and listening. This is the last part of the 5002. Then we'll move on to the math. Writing, speaking, and listening. So we're going to talk about the writing process all the way from the developmental stages of writing, which is like scribbling, mock handwriting, phonetic spelling, things like that. Then as we get into the upper grades, we're talking about, the drafting process, the peer review process, the revision process, the publishing process, and all of that. Audience awareness, understanding audience and purpose for what we're writing for. You will have a couple questions on grammar and mechanics, not a lot, probably 3 or 4. Stuff on parallel structures, misplaced modifiers, verb phrases, pronoun antecedent agreement, things like that. And then teaching students how to present their ideas clearly and coherently in front of the class. All right. So let's have a look at what that might look like. Now, you'll see stuff like this where you have a piece of student writing here. You've got the question stem and you've got all of this here. And I can see there's quotes here. You'll see this on the exam. Just read these and see what you think. Okay. So it says, you use the term American alligator a lot. Try combining sentences to give the paragraph varied language. And I like the term varied language. Varied language for the writing section of the exam is good. Want to teach students how to vary their sentences so they're not so robotic, So A is okay. I don't see anything positive in A, which we want to do positive feedback, but I'm going to leave it. B, good job. Keep up the great work. B stands out as a bad answer. Even though it's positive, it's not specific and meaningful. Feedback should be specific and meaningful. And you could see here in the question stem, it says appropriate feedback. C, consider using a closing statement at the end. Okay, this is specific, but it's not real meaningful. I don't love C. B and C are out. A is okay. Let's look at D. Your writing does a great job describing your knowledge about the American alligator. All right, a positive, specific anecdote about the writing. And then something they can work on. Consider deleting sentence 4 so it doesn't take away from your overall theme. Not only is this positive with a little bit of criticism, it is specific and meaningful. So I'm telling the student exactly what the student needs to do. I don't even need to read this. You guys, what you'll do is a lot of people who are new to testing, they'll start here and they'll read all this, then they'll read this, then they'll read this, then they got to go back and read this. You don't even need to read a lot of the stimulus. Now you can, of course, taking a test, you don't want to skip things. But I'm just saying a lot of times you don't have to. This stem here says it all. What would be appropriate feedback to share with the student? I don't even have to read this part up here. I know that D is the best answer because it's specific and meaningful. And it's got a little positive and a little criticism. When I was a coach, I was a cross-country coach when I was a teacher at high school. And my mentor used to say, you gotta praise more than you kick. And that means that you got to tell them they're doing a good job before you knock them down. You still got to knock them down, especially in sports. I'm very tolerant when it comes to reading. I think everybody learns at their own pace. I think that there shouldn't be any kind of races to the top when it comes to reading because everybody is learning this skill. But as a running coach, I want to win. And he had to remind me, hey, listen, Jasper, you got to go easy on that. You got to praise more than you kick. And that goes the same way with especially with their writing. They're showing you something. They've put themselves out there. You got to tell them, hey, I really like this, and be specific, not just good job. Hey, I love the way you described your American alligator. I really liked your use of punctuation. Be specific and then hit them with and I think you should also consider doing X, Y, or Z. And that'll be a good way to show them feedback. All right. All right, moving on, let's go to the 5003 here. Now, there are 3 content areas within this subtest. This is the math. All right, we have numbers and operations, algebraic thinking, geometry, measurement, data probability, and stats. Now, the biggest part is here, numbers and operations, because it encompasses so many things. It's going to encompass place value. It's going to encompass those very beginning skills like subtizing and things like that. And it's also going to encompass proportions and percents and that type of stuff. So it's a big one. Then we have algebra, and then we have geometry, probability, and stats. Let's have a look at numbers and operations. So again, you're looking at place value, order of operations, also called PEMDAS. In this category, you're going to have exponents, fractions, decimals, percents, and proportions. Anything numbers, anything operations. And most math tests have numbers and operations, algebra, geometry, and probability and stats. Even ACT is the same. 10th grade math exams are the same. Elementary math exams are the same. They're just, developmentally appropriate based on this, okay? So let's go ahead and have a look at a question here. Now, this one is coming from numbers and operations, this first content category, all right? So you can see that we have a word problem. And now remember, this is why you can't try to memorize questions, because I could ask you this question as an actual math question. I could ask it as a word problem. I could ask it as a diagram. It's why you have to have the skills before, anything else. So don't just try to memorize. It won't work. All right, I can see, again, I'm working backwards. I have to pick an actual number, so I'm going to have to work this out. Let's have a look at the question. Ryan works at a sandwich shop and can make 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. Let me get my calculator out. Hold on. And you do get a calculator on this test. It's an on-screen four-function calculator, all right? So Ryan works at a sandwich shop, can make 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. At this rate, it's a key word here telling me what I need to do. How many sandwiches can he make in a 4-hour shift? Rate indicates I'm going to need to set up a proportion. Now, every time I do math live on air here, I always get criticism. Why didn't you just do it this way? Why didn't you just take the shortcut? Because people who are watching this video usually are struggling in math, and I want to show them how to do it properly before we start taking shortcuts. I want you to get through the math quickly, but this is the best way, I think, as a teacher to do this for my students, which is you guys. Of course, there are quicker ways to do this, but I need to set up a proportion so that those of you who struggle with math understand what's going on. Rate is a proportion. You might see it like this, 4-to-1. This is a ratio or a rate. We're talking about a proportion. So if we're going to use that for this particular word problem, I'm going to set two fractions equal to one another. All right. And we're going to get matchy. Whatever I put on the top is going to be the same on both sides. Whatever I put on the bottom is going to be the same on both sides. So let's start with 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. I have sandwiches over minutes. So let's do the same on the other side. Sandwiches over minutes. Well, I don't know how many sandwiches because it says how many sandwiches can he make? So that's going to become X. I'm looking for that. Can he make it a 4-hour shift? Well, I got minutes here. I need to convert 4 hours into minutes. What do? I multiply by 60 because there are 60 minutes in an hour and I have 4 hours. So this is going to be 240 minutes. So notice I have sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes. Matchy. I can't put minutes over sandwiches equals sandwiches over minutes. I got to have sandwiches on the top, minutes on the bottom. I could put minutes at the top and sandwiches on the bottom on both sides, and it will work. But I like to go in the order by which the word problem is going. Another hint. Notice I have 3 out of the 4 values I need here. I have sandwiches, and then the time it takes, and then I have the time, but I don't have the sandwiches for the other piece of it. So I need that 3rd out of the 4 things. That'll also indicate you need a proportion. Now what do? Well, I cross multiply and solve. So 50 times X is 50X. Keep that equal sign there. And I've got 35 times 240. And this is going to be 8,400. Now, right away, I just want you to have a look at something. I have 50 here and I have 8,400. Both ending in zeros. I know 50 does go into 8,400. I'm always looking at my answer choices here. I see these are even numbers. There's no decimals going on. If I start to get weird numbers with decimals, I know I'm going in the wrong direction. But in this case, I'm actually going in the right direction because I know 50 goes into 840 because in order to isolate this X, I have to divide by 50, and I get 168 sandwiches in a 4-hour shift. X equals 168. All right. Now, there are shortcuts you can do. There are all kinds of things you can do. I like to set it up this way. It's quick. Sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes. I don't know how many sandwiches I can make. And I know that I'm working 4 hours. That's 240 minutes. Sandwiches over minutes, matchy, cross multiply, solve for X. All right. And we get 168. Okay. Algebraic thinking. Now, this is where you might have expressions and equations, linear relationships, formulas of unknown quantities, verbal statements, proportions. Notice that this problem here could also be considered algebra because I had to use algebra to solve it. I had to solve for X. That's algebra. So there's a lot of different skills being assessed in this particular question. I actually really like this question because it's numbers and operations, and it's also algebraic thinking. So just know that. And we'll get into a few here. Now, a classic algebra problem is something like this, where you actually see the expression. Okay, so you can see here that I'm being asked to evaluate the equation. This should actually say expression because there's no equal sign. So this should say expression. Sorry, just getting technical here. That should say evaluate the expression for b equals -4. So basically what they're saying here is wherever you see a b, we're going to put in a -4. So you can see what's going on here. So when I rewrite this, and again, there's lots of ways we can shortcut it. I'm not going to shortcut it because I want to make sure my math is correct. They'll do this a lot. You have negatives and minus signs and all this stuff. They're trying to trip you up. And you'll notice here that -28, -4, 4, and 28, these are our answer choices. If you misplace the negative, they have your incorrect answer in the answer choices. They will anticipate your errors, common errors. That's what good math test makers do. So you have to be careful. So I'm going to just bring this -4 into this equation. So I'm going to keep this negative, and wherever I see a b, I'm going to put a -4 minus 3 times -4. Keep it proper. Don't skip any steps because there's too many negatives. I don't like it. Now I'm going to use PEMDAS. Always use PEMDAS. Now, I don't have any parentheses. Parentheses means there's like some sort of equation inside of a or some sort of operation inside the parentheses, like here, 2 + 3. We don't have that. We do have parentheses, but there's no operation going on inside of them. So I can move to exponents here. Now, be careful. If I had done this first, this would be considered multiplication. A negative times a negative, that would be a +4. And then 4 to the second power would be 16. But that's not the proper order of operations. You got to be careful here. Start with the exponent first. -4 times -4 is +16. But I have this negative here. Notice that becomes -16. Had I distributed this first, I would have gotten just 16. It would have changed my whole thing. Now I'm going to bring this down. -3 times a -4 is a +12. Notice I have -16 plus 12. And my answer is going to be -4 because -16 plus 12 is a -4. All right. Now you can even draw a number line if you wanted to. If I had a 0 here and I was all the way down here by -16 and I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be a -12. I'm still in the negative. It just depends on how you want to do it. Got to be careful with those negatives. Okay. So again, did the exponent -4 times -4 is 16. Still have that negative there. When I distribute it in, I get -16. And then I have a -3 times -4. Negative times negative makes it a +12. -16 plus 12 is -4. All right. And the last section of the math, geometry, measurement, and data, probability and stats. I had to shorten that a little bit here. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3-dimensional figures. We might get this in a word problem. We might get in an equation. Perimeter, area, volume, circumference, circles, cylinders, things like that. Units of measure, cups to gallons, pints to quarts, things like that. You might see some central tendency, mean, median, and mode, averages, things like that. You're definitely going to have some charts and graphs, tables, probability, and again, proportions. Proportions go across all of them in math, right? So let's have a look at this here. What is the perimeter of a square? 2 keywords here. Perimeter of a square. Remember, perimeter is when we add up all the sides. Area, which we have here, is multiplying base times height. So a couple of different things here. Perimeter is this side plus this side plus this side plus this side. And area is base times height. All right. And we know it's a square. All sides are equal. And 49 square inches is the area, not the perimeter, the area. Okay. Well, if I have a square and the base times height equals 49, and these two are equal, this is going to be 7 times 7, right? Because 7 times 7 equals 49. So that means the base is 7, the height is 7, the top is 7, and the sides are 7. They're all 7 because we have a square. And 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7, or 7 times 4, equals 28 inches. So you got a lot of different things going on here. You have to make sure you understand your rules for squares and rectangles and rhombuses and things like that. And we do cover all of that in our book. We have a lot of information for that in our book. All right, let's try another one. This one is more about probability and combination. So if I have a look at these answer choices here, I can see that I'm just looking for straight up numbers. Let's have a look at number 9. Ellie's food truck currently serves 4 main dishes and 3 side dishes. And each meal consists of 1 main dish and 1 side dish. Okay, you get 1 main and 1 side. Next week, she is adding 1 main dish and 2 sides to the menu for people to pick from. So instead of 4 to 3, it's going to be 5 to 5. How many more combinations of meals will her customers be able to get? All right, when you see this word combination, don't start going, okay, main and a side, 1, main and a side, 2. Okay, let me switch them around. Just use multiplication. Because you only get 1 main and 1 side, just do 4 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. There are 12 different combinations currently that I can use right now when I pick my mains and my sides for Ellie's food truck. But she's taking these 4 mains and sides and turning them into, she's adding a main, which makes 5 mains, and 2 sides, which means 5 sides. Well, what's 5 times 5? The new one is going to be 25. Now be careful. You might go, okay, 25, we're done. No, read the question stem. Be careful. They've anticipated you moving quickly. It says how many more combinations, not how many new combinations, how many more combinations of meals will her customers be able to get? Well, that's 25 minus 12. That's 13. There are 13 additional more combinations that they can have now with this new main and these 2 new sides. Be careful. Read the question all the way through. Okay. All right. I'm going to just stop here. Go to my thing here and just see if anybody has any questions, because I know we probably have a lot. Okay. How long does it take to complete the online course? We recommend about a week per subject area. It just depends. There's a lot in there. So I like to do like a week for ELA, a week for math, a week for social studies, and a week for science. But you can certainly do it quicker. Some people like to cram. I like small incremental practice sessions over time rather than cramming. All right. Can we use a calculator button for the combination? You can, Sabrina, there is a 4-function calculator online. So what I would do is download the online, you can, if you have a Mac, there's a calculator app in there, but I would download the app for the calculator and just practice using it on your computer because it's a lot different than typing it in here, okay? Do we need to memorize all the formulas in math? No, you do not. They have them embedded in the question, and they will also have a formula sheet for all the main ones, okay? But I do recommend like what is area of a square and a rectangle? What is area of a triangle? Those are things you should know. 1/2 base times height is the triangle. Base times height is the rectangle and square, okay? Do we get scrap paper? Yes, you do. In my experience, it's like a dry erase paper where you can use like a dry erase marker in the paper. Sometimes you'll get physical paper. It just depends on the testing center. But yes, you will get scratch paper. What is the difference in the Praxis and the Praxis 2? AJ, good question. Praxis 1 is the Praxis core. That is like an ACT. It has reading, writing, math, and grammar. What I'm doing today is a subject area. This is about the elementary school teachers want to pass this because they want to be elementary school teachers. Most people have to pass the Praxis core and their subject area exam. So like this one here is for special education. If you want to be a special education teacher, this is considered a Praxis 2 subject area. And we have a blog on that. I'll send it out in the email. I have a blog and a video on that. So that'll be good. Okay, what do you recommend for science for elementary? I recommend our book for sure. Mike T, read the questions and don't rush the answers. You showed me that by rushing. I picked the answer quickly. Yes, Mike T, it's right there, especially in math. They do this all the time. I study ACT, SAT too. They anticipate your wrong answers. They put in there, sometimes they'll say how many more combinations than the original, just because they know you're going to get that 25 and you're going to go, oh, boom, 25 and grab it and move on. Slow down. Just read that stem one more time and figure out what they're asking you. You don't have to read the whole question again. Just make sure you read that last sentence because that'll show you what they're actually asking. Very good point, Mike T. I test at home and use a whiteboard too. Yeah, so whiteboard, Mia, some people, it just depends on where you're testing and what place you're testing at. When you say 1 week, how many hours in that? Okay, so a lot of people ask exactly how many hours they're supposed to study. It depends on your skill level. Like for math, this could just be a brush up session for you and you're good to go. Or you could have struggled with math your whole life and you've got a lot of work to do. It just depends. If you're just kind of brushing up on everything, I would say 30 to 40 minutes a night. That's it. You do not have to spend 4 hours a day on this. And I don't recommend that. It's too much. 30 to 40 minutes a night. Read a section, do the practice questions, move on. Read a section, do the practice questions, move on. Then I would dedicate some time to the actual practice tests, the big tests in the back of the book, because I do have those mini quizzes at the end of each section. Okay. So just break it up one section at a time. And it's broken up that way. Okay. Should I schedule the test 2 weeks out for each to give myself time to prepare? I think so. 2 weeks is good. Yeah. And stick to it. 40 minutes a night, 30 to 40 minutes a night. Put it in your calendar. Tell your family, do not bother me. I am studying for my exam. For those of us who are intimidated by math and have test anxiety, do you have any additional tips? All right, Brandy, good question. We have to stop telling ourselves stories about math. Those of you who have struggled with math, I understand. And we say things like, I'm just not good at math, or I'm English brained, not math brained. That's not true. Those are stories we're telling ourselves. Those are lies. Everybody is both brains. We can be a math person and an English person. In fact, some of the greatest philosophers and writers and artists were mathematicians. So that is I don't know where it came up, left brain versus right brain. We use all of our brain all the time, okay? Now, you might have had more success in English language arts, or opposite. You might be someone who has found a lot of success in math and not in English language arts. But I would recommend stop telling yourself those stories and start saying, as soon as I brush up on this math, I'm going to be better at math. I'll give you an example. I thought I was an English language arts person. I thought I was not a science person. Growing up, I did well in English language arts. I studied it in college. I got a degree in English. My bachelor's degree is in English. Then I became a teacher, and the only open spot they had was biology, my worst subject in high school. So I studied it. I stayed ahead of the kids. I ended up really enjoying it. And my scores became some of the best in the building, some of the best in the district, because I worked so hard on those, my scores for my kids. I also bribed them with chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A, but that's another story. We worked really hard and we learned a lot together. And I learned it isn't that complicated, that I can be a science person. And then I became a science teacher. I love science. So stop telling yourselves those stories. For test anxiety, here's the thing, you guys. Lots of people have to take this test more than once. It's hard. It's a big test, okay? So just take it. And if you're not successful, take it again. You're not going to die. Nobody's going to put you in jail because you didn't pass. Just take it again. It's expensive, I know, and that is problematic, and there's nothing I can do about that. But you just take it again. And talk to yourself the way you would talk to your students. Hey, I know you can do it next time. I think you should brush up on this. Start to learn those skills. Work on that math. Use my products. Use Khan Academy. Use released ACT tests. Grab a book from the math teacher at your school. Start to work through those problems, and you will get it. Never say to yourself, I'm not a math person, because you are a math person. You've just had more success in another area. It's time to have success in math. You can do it. I know you can. Jonathan, do you have online testing in the online materials, does it tell a person's weak areas after the test? Is the test the same questions or will it be different every time? Okay, Jonathan, the questions in our tests, in our practice tests, do not change. We're not Pearson. We're not ETS. We don't have hundreds of test item writers to just keep writing different items. We do have additional questions in the online course, and they are facilitated online. I recommend using the study guide to see where you are low, because in the study guide, let me show you real quick, just so you guys can see something here. Let me go here. Let me show you how to do that. Okay. So let's say I am in, let me go to math real quick because everybody's talking about math. So let me just scroll. Oh, math is up here. Sorry. I've been working in a lot of different study guides. Okay. So you can see here in our answer explanations for math, I always have what category these questions come from. So you can see if you're missing a lot of questions in section 1, you need to go back and work in section 1. Okay. If you're missing a lot in section 3, you need to go back in section 3 and work on those. I try to keep them in somewhat of an order, but it's hard because they assess a lot of different things. And some questions assess more than one content category, but I try to go with the main one. So I would use the practice test after you've studied all the material. When you go in and take your first practice test, there are 2 for each content or for each subtest. So let's say I just finished math and I do my math practice test, okay, and I'm grading it. Pay attention to this category here. If you've missed a lot in section 3, like you've missed 70% of the ones in section 3, you need to go back to section 3 and fix it up. Go back through, work through it, and then retest on practice test 2. And that'll help you, okay? Now, on our online course, we don't just have an infinite amount of questions that keep changing. We don't have that capability. I wish we did. I would love to have 100 item writers like big testing companies do. We just don't have that. It's me and a couple other people on my team. So we have a lot of questions. There's over 700 practice test questions in this book. There's over 500 not 500. There's over like 300 for the math alone. I mean, there's not many more I can give you on that. All right. But you can always use ACT. You can always use other books as well for different questions. Okay. So that's how I would do that. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Rosa, helping please with 5025. Okay. Rosa, we have a webinar on that. But we're talking about the 5001 today. I have lots of webinars on different ones. Check out our webinars page. Do the videos explain each question? The videos explain a lot of the questions. They don't explain everyone in the 5001 because there's 700 questions, and I couldn't do that. So most of my online courses, I explain all the practice tests. For this one, it's just, I couldn't do it. So I go over the skills and I go over some of the harder questions, but I don't have a video explaining every single question, but we do have detailed answer explanations in here. Okay. All right. Now let's get to the other one because we have somebody taking this exam soon. So I want to go over let's go over the social studies. All right. Social studies is mainly memorization, but remember, I don't know what test you're going to get. And so we need to make sure we understand these concepts a lot. So there are 3 main content categories in the 5004 subtest. This is social studies. Okay. First, we're going to have U.S. history, government, and citizenship. This is all about European exploration to the Americas, indigenous people, what happened and what Europeans did to them, slavery, the colonies, the American Revolution, the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, the Articles of Confederation, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the amendments, 3 branches of government. It's got a lot. This is the biggest part of it right here. You can see at 27 questions at 45%. Now, again, I don't know what questions you're going to get on that. I have covered everything in the specs, but you have to be able to understand these sections so that no matter what you're asked, you can grab it because you have that information, okay? Then the next one is geography, anthropology, and sociology. So this is going to be things like, longitude, latitude, maps, things like that, but also about people, different types of people, and anthropology and sociology, languages, how people farmed, how human societies developed, things like that, okay? And then the last part is econ and world history. They lump those together for the elementary grades. As you go up in the grades, like middle school, these are sectioned out. In high school, they're also sectioned out. But for this, they're together. So economics, basic principles, nothing too crazy. Supply and demand, price floors and ceilings, opportunity cost, things like that. And then world history, I mean, anything from the Paleolithic era all the way up to the 21st century. It's a big category. So you got to kind of know that. Timelines, I have a lot of timelines in my book and major things that have happened. But again, I don't know which ones they're going to pick for you guys. It's history. It's infinite, right? So there's lots of different questions that we can do. So let's talk about U.S. history. We talked about this already. European exploration, coming over on boats, exploring the New World. Why did they? They were looking for the passage between Europe and the Orient. So they were looking for the Northwest Passage, and they got the Americas instead. Then as we colonize, and I say we because I am from European descent, but as Europeans colonize, American Revolution takes place. Then after that, major events, Civil War, wayward expansion or westward expansion. Key documents, Declaration of Independence, Constitution. This should say Federalist Papers. Sorry, that says Feudalist Papers. It should say Federalist. I mistyped there. Sorry about that. Branches of government, and then, of course, citizenship. This is civics. A lot of information here. Let's have a look at a question. This is number 1 on page 16. All right, so we have implementation of the Indian removal process, reconstitution of the southern states, exploration of the new territory, initiation of the first U.S. Census. Can't do much there. Let's read the question. Following the Louisiana Purchase, Thomas Jefferson ordered which of the following tasks to be completed? Now remember, the Louisiana Purchase was a big purchase from France. It ranged all the way down from Louisiana over, I can't remember exactly where over, but then up all the way into Canada. So we got all this new land. What do we need to do? We need to explore the new territory. And if we got even more specific, this was the Lewis and Clark exploration. This is where we went out west, started to go out west and explore that new territory, all right, and see what it had to offer us as, colonists. So that's C. Let's have a look at geography, anthropology, and sociology. So we've got world geography and concepts, longitude, latitude, prime meridian, equator, things like that. Physical and human systems. So physical systems are things like the world doing its thing or the earth doing its thing, seasons and all that. Ties a little bit into science as well. Volcanoes, mountains, mountain ranges, things like that. Ring of fire, for earthquakes and stuff. And then human systems, how did humans move around the earth? How did they farm? How did they use terrace farming versus irrigation versus whatever? And how did we make these human systems? How do we communicate? Stuff like that. And then cultures, of course, goes in with that, human systems. And then people, migration, and settlement. So it's all about the geography, but then, of course, the anthropology and the sociology. So let's have a look at what a question might look like here. So we have a map. So it says, using the map, which country is 60 degrees north and 120 degrees east? So I got to use my longitude and latitude here. So I need to know that the first one is longitude and the second number is latitude. So if I went 60 over to 120, we'd be here. This is going to be Russia. Now this one seems pretty easy, but they might say something like, which country is in the northeast hemisphere? You would need to know your north, south, east, west hemispheres. There could be a lot of different ways in which this is asked. So this is just a longitude, latitude exercise, but it may be asked a lot of different ways. So make sure you understand that. Now let's talk about world history and economics. So we're going to have ancient civilizations. These are like the Romans, the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians. I mean, this goes back a long time, and it's going to go all the way up to the beginning of the 21st century. So we're talking a lot of stuff happening. I try to break down the most important parts, but it's everything from the world wars, the Civil War, even though that's covered in U.S. history, it's also a piece of world history. World War I, World War II, the Cold War, stuff like that. Those are all developments of the 20th century. Cross-cultural comparisons, what was going on in these different ancient civilizations. Then we're going to get into economics. We said this before, basic econ, supply and demand, scarcity, choice, opportunity costs, things like that. Push-pull factors, why people immigrate emigrate and immigrate to other countries. And then, of course, populations, resources, and impact. That has a lot to do with the push-pull factors. Why do people leave and why do people come? Typically, economics and a better life. All right, let's have a look at this particular question here. Which of the following civilization was the first to use irrigation? This is kind of a tricky one. Mesopotamia was the first to use irrigation, but Rome actually perfected irrigation later. But it's asking who was the first. So B is the best answer, but be careful. Rome did perfect irrigation to have these systems of pipes and things like that for their farms. So just be careful with the question. I hate how they lump these together because sometimes it's not clear. If you see ancient Rome and Mesopotamia together, make sure and it's about irrigation, make sure you see what they're asking you. If they're talking about the very first people to use it, Mesopotamia. If they're talking about the people who perfected it, it's going to be Rome. All right. And Pangaea is not a civilization. Pangaea was when the earth was all connected. All the continents were connected and then they broke apart. That's Pangaea, or continental drift. We also cover that in science. Speaking of science, let's move on to Science 5005. 3 content categories here: Earth, space, life, and physical science. So they're all pretty much the same, 33, 33, 33. So Earth space science is the Earth, moon, sun, stars, Earth systems, like, the water cycle and earthquakes and its rotation and its revolution around the sun. Those are all Earth systems. They cause seasons. They cause all kinds of things, weather, all that different stuff. Earth spheres, the cryosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, all of that. Earth's crust, the lithosphere. That's going to include mountains, canyons, anything on the top of the earth, bedrock, soil, all of that. And then, of course, in all of these, we want to make sure we're fostering a student's inquiry. Science is all about asking questions, using the scientific method, testing hypotheses. We always want students to be inquisitive. So anything that has to do with inquiry is going to be a good word on this exam. Let's have a look at the water cycle here. I can see that's going on here. The picture is an example of, this is the hydrosphere. So anything that has to do with water is hydro. Hydro means water. Geosphere is anything that has to do with like the minerals in the ground, like a geologist. Cryosphere is all the ice on all the frozen water, all the ice on Earth. And the biosphere is anything living. So we want to make sure we know that. And you can see we've got precipitation, transpiration, condensation, runoff. This is all about the water. And so that's going to be the hydrosphere there. Now with life science, this is tough because it's everything from the basic unit of life, which is the cell. This was my favorite. I taught bio in high school. This is when I fell in love with science. Cells and DNA and heredity was just like the coolest thing ever. I fell in love with it, teaching it. But life science is everything from cell theory all the way to life cycles, like big life cycles on Earth in the biosphere. So everything from a single cellular organism all the way out to like an ecosystem full of different organisms. So it's got a lot, and you're going to be asked a lot of different questions. So everything from parts of the cell and how they work to parts of humans and also animals, interdependence, organisms and ecosystems, and how other organisms are interdependent on one another. Life cycles of, life cycle of a butterfly, life cycle of a frog, life cycle of a human. They're all different. And then, of course, inquiry, again, is going to be a good word on this exam. Let's have a look here. This is on page 21 of the free study guide. Number 6, which of the following is a producer? All right. Now, I added this here. This is from the actual study guide. I have this energy pyramid in the study guide. And you could see it says 100% producer, which is grass, right? But you may not have this on the test. They may not give you the actual diagram. I added it here because I want you to see that the grass is 100% producer. Why? Because the grass goes through a process of photosynthesis and it produces carbohydrates. The bunny eats the carbohydrates and gets energy. The snake eats the bunny and gets some energy, but energy is lost. A little bit of energy is lost. and then the bird eats the snake, and then the hawk eats the bird. The further up you go up the energy pyramid, you're losing some energy. Most of the energy is stored down here in the grass, in carbohydrates. Remember, photosynthesis is when plants take water and carbon dioxide and light and make sugar, carbohydrates, and oxygen. That's the byproduct. We then eat, animals eat the carbohydrates and breathe in the oxygen, and then we give off CO2 and water. And the cycle goes on and on. So when you are moving up this pyramid here, you're losing some energy because the bunny got most of the energy from the grass. Then the snake gets some of that from the bunny. And then the bird gets some of that from the snake. And then the hawk gets some of that from the bird. All right. But grass is the producer. Trees, grass, flowers, things like that, they are producers. All right. And let's go to the last one, physical science here. I've got two to go with this one. Physical science is physics and chem. So anything that has to do with physical and chemical changes, forces in motion, electricity, forms of energy, machines. You got to know you have to know your basic machines. And then, of course, again, inquiry, good word. Let's have a look at this one. This one's about lightning. This is number 8, page 21. Okay. So which of the following is an accurate description of how lightning works? All right. So you can see they do this a lot on the test. They'll have like things listed in different orders. So you can see A, when the ground becomes positively charged, B, when the ground becomes negatively charged. Notice that A and B are the same thing happening. We're just mixing up what's going on here. So when the ground becomes positively charged, the negatively charged electrons in the cloud move down the cloud toward the ground and lightning occurs. A is actually correct. Let me do a little, I'm going to draw a picture for you guys. It's not going to be pretty. All right, so here we have a cloud. All right, and here's the ground. And what happens is at different parts, at different times, the negatively charged particles will start to move below the ground because everything's charged, right? And then the positively charged particles will move up to the ground. And then what happens is, because opposites attract, negatively charged particles will start to move down the cloud, and positively charged particles will move up into the cloud. And notice we got negative and positive, and when this becomes strong enough, lightning. Now, of course, it's a lot more technical than that, but for this test, that's all you need to know. So the ground becomes positively charged and the cloud becomes negatively charged at the bottom. And it doesn't happen the other way around. It's not, you don't have positively charged in the cloud at the bottom and negatively charged ground. It only happens when the ground becomes positively charged and the cloud gets that negative charge at the bottom and lightning occurs, okay? And that happens periodically. Let's have a look at energy. At what point on the graphic below is potential energy the highest? Potential energy is the highest when kinetic energy is the lowest. A is when potential energy is the highest. If I were to pull that pulley up here, before I let it go, it's at its highest potential energy. When I let it go, now it's in kinetic energy. If it asked here, at what point of the graphic is kinetic energy the highest? That's going to be C. Kinetic energy is going to be highest when it's right at the bottom and it's moving down towards that pendulum. Then we got a little bit of potential energy here at E. Not as high as A. A is the highest potential. And then, it comes back down here and then here, and it swings back and forth until it comes to a stop. But the highest potential energy is A. It's at the top. If you see it as like done on a hill, and maybe it's a car or a person, I don't know, like a bike. Let's just put a bike here, and the bike is moving down the hill. The potential energy is highest at the top of the hill, and kinetic energy is lowest right here before it hits the bottom of the hill. It's at its highest. Okay. All right. Let's go back here. Stop sharing. All right. So that concludes the presentation today. Is this the test that will replace the Mogia? Dawn, I don't know what you're asking, the MOGEA. I don't know what test you're asking about. There is a new elementary education test coming out, the 7001. That was just released. The specs were just released, but the states that are using it has not been released. I've been monitoring it like crazy. And the specs look identical to this. So not much has changed, but I will be keeping an eye on that. All right. Is there a social studies glossary? Mike, there's not a glossary, not in my book. There are some charts and graphs and things like that, but I cover everything that's in the specs in the book. What is the best way to study for this part? I do not remember these dates so well. You might be asking about, let's see, it's 11:10. You might be asking about the social studies. Really, you should just read a lot of what I have in the social studies book and have an understanding of everything that's going on there. It's kind of hard with the social studies and science because it's more memorization of concepts than it is really of anything else. I know it's hard. You just really have to understand what's in the specs. And I outline everything that's in the specs in the book. But you can also download the test specifications by Googling Praxis 5001 Study Companion. If you Google that, you will be taken to a document. Make sure it's on the ETS website and it's a PDF. And it shows you everything that's on the exam. Now, I cover everything that's on the specs in the book, but you might want to look at that document yourself, all right? And that'll help you. Do you have a test for business education? No, I do not, Charles. Sorry about that. Sabrina, thank you for all your help. Thank you for attending, Sabrina. All right, real quick, I want to show you where you can get more resources, okay? Free resources. So let me just share my screen here. So on my YouTube channel, I talked a little bit about that today. I've got test strategy. You're definitely going to want to look at that. Somebody was asking me about the difference between Praxis 1 versus Praxis 2. I have a video on that here. The teaching reading playlist is going to help you tremendously with the 5002. That's going to help you a lot. And then, of course, you can check out our online courses, which let me just give you, like, this is the math. Let me just show you the math really quick. Hang on one second. Preview. So this is the math. And you can see that when you start course, I mean, look at this menu on the side. It's got everything here. Of course, you get the study guide with all of our online courses. You get the study guide, but you're going to get videos, extra practice here. You're just going to continue through the module. I do go through a lot of the questions, some of the harder questions, and I do that for everything. So there's going to be questions and then explanation of the questions. These are all extra practice within there. And then, of course, we have a post-test, which is simulated like test day, although ETS has their own stuff. So mine is the way mine looks, right? But, you can go through this and it's similar. And then it has answer explanations in there for you as well. All right. Now, I also have, let's see here. Let's go to... we've got free webinars, and a couple of you were asking about those coming up for Praxis Early Childhood Education. I've got that coming up here. Next week is going to be the SLLA. That's our leadership exam. A lot of you are going for leadership. And then I have all these other ones. If you don't have time to wait, I've got all these other ones here. Early childhood here. How to lesson plan. This is really good for new teachers. This one's about classroom management. This one's about secondary ELA. 5006. Some of you are asking about other tests. I've got them all here. PLT I just did. Here it is. PLT. Praxis Core was last week. ESOL. So check out those. We'll link that up. Then, of course, I've got my YouTube channel, which I already shared, and then TikTok. If you like shorter videos, I do a lot of short videos. I do math, I do science, social studies, and I do a lot of reading instruction here. So check me out on TikTok if you like TikTok. And then, of course, Facebook. I'm always live on Facebook. So be sure you check out our study guide if you're interested in that. If you liked it, leave me a review on Amazon if you wouldn't mind. And you can always email us if you have any questions or concerns about anything. I'm so glad you guys were here with me today. I know it's a long one. This is a big test, and it's Saturday, and you guys are probably tired. You're coming to the end of the year, and you want to chill out, not work. But, get through this test. And remember, it's okay if you don't pass everything the first time. This is a big test. So go easy on yourselves and all of that. So if you have any questions about your orders or you want to apply. Oh, here's one thing. If you've already purchased this on Amazon and you want the online course, email us. We'll give you an offer code to apply this to the online course. So you'll get this money off. It's $42.99 on Amazon. We'll give you an offer code and you'll get that off the online course. You don't have to pay for it twice because you get the book with the course. So if you purchase the physical, email us, hey, I purchased the physical. Send us a picture of the order, not just a picture of your book, of the order and your name visible so we can see that. And we'll send you an offer code and it'll take that money off the book for you. Okay. Can you put up the YouTube link? It's Heather, it's Kathleen Jasper on YouTube. I'll also link it up in the email, but here you go. Let's just make share screen. It's all right here, Kathleen Jasper. If you search Kathleen Jasper, it'll come up, but I'll go ahead and throw this. You can also, it's YouTube/Kathleen Jasper EDD will help it as well. But let me just go ahead and grab that. I'll throw it in here. There you go. There's the YouTube link. What is your email? Latoya, if you want to email us, it's info@kathleenjasper.com. You can also find it on our website, info@kathleenjasper.com. All right. I have the book. Awesome. I'm so glad you have the book. If you guys like the book, please review it on Amazon if you don't mind. This one just came out, so we need as many reviews as we can get. Do you think your online course will help me with pre-K3 science and developmental knowledge in Florida? Mercedes, we don't prep for Florida exams anymore. I do have an early childhood education free webinar. I'd recommend our free stuff first because our stuff is aligned to Praxis, not the Florida test. But check out our free stuff, and if you think you like it, you can certainly use it. But it's not aligned to Florida. Thank you so much, Brandy. I appreciate your support. I'm glad you're here. Do you have anything to help with SEL standards? SEL, social emotional learning, not at the moment. A lot of that's embedded in our books already because we do a lot of teaching scenarios, but not specifically SEL. All right. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to cut you guys loose now. It is almost 11:30, and I'm really happy you guys joined me today. If you have any questions, hit us up at info@kathleenjasper.com. I really appreciate you taking the time to come to the free webinar. I also appreciate you using my resources. It means the world to me, and I am here for you when you need us, and just reach out and let us know how you're doing. Thank you so much for joining me today.